So what we did is we lined up a few of these adoption centers that have cats and dogs. And if you've ever been on these things, they just basically have biographies of all the dogs and all the cats that are there for adoption. And I mean, if you could have been in our rooms when we showed these little biographies, they have names, they have, hobbies, it's just the kids were like falling over, rolling around. Oh, it was crazy. Just nuts. Like, we could have done it all day. I literally think we could have done it all day. It was a great soft launch. So they were in. That was it. It was off. Talk about a launch. It was off. They were fired up.
This is High Tech High Unboxed. I'm Alec Patton, and that was the voice of Jeff Govoni, who teaches 5th grade at High Tech Elementary Point Loma. I interviewed Jeff on the first day of Deeper Learning via PBL, a class I teach with Stacy Lopez as part of High Tech High's teacher credentialing program. In this class, students each design their own project. And because one of the core practices of PBL is learning by studying models of excellence, we launched the course by inviting a teacher to come in and talk about an awesome project that they've done. For this class, Jeff told us about a project he and his 5th grade colleagues did last year in which students designed and built dog houses and cat condos for animals seeking adoption. You'll hear my interview first and then some questions from the audience. Let's get into it. Jeff Govoni, 5th grade teacher at High Tech Elementary Point Loma. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody in the crowd, shout so the folks at home can hear you. So I want to get started with, where does the story of the Cause for Paws project start for you?
Okay, it starts with a 4th grade teacher a couple years earlier, actually probably 6 or 7 years ago now, but this is where the seed was planted, built dog houses. But they built them from like a kit. And I just remember thinking, which is fine, but I just remember thinking like the potential for that project and to make those dog houses have an authentic ending, like where they end up could be tied in with any kind of adoption agency.
Yeah.
And then I didn't think about it for years. I got caught up in other projects.
Yeah. And so, but you have this kind of thing in the back of your mind of like, we could do something really cool with this. Mm-hmm. How did that thread get picked up again?
I felt like I just had to have the right place and the right colleagues. So like, I think you just kind of, as you go through your career, so many things impact like what project you're doing and who you're working with. So it was always in the back of my mind. And when I threw it out at my new colleagues last year, they seemed pretty excited about it and kind of had some great ideas themselves. And then we were off and running.
Yeah. Let's get really specific though. You said like it was like having the right group.
Yeah.
What happened? When did the phrase, we could build dog houses, how did it happen?
Mm-hmm. We were gaming possible projects last summer, a year ago summer, and it was in my head. I said I'm gonna throw it out to them and just tell them a little bit about my experience. I had some success doing owl boxes a few years back, and when I taught in Chula Vista, so I felt like this was just kind of a glorified owl box. Turned out to be a little more complicated than that. So I just kind of threw it out there, and I said I think it could be a really cool, really authentic product, and they went with it.
All right, and when you say in the summer, was this an end-of-year thing? Were you guys just all hanging out at the beach? Was this a PD thing? What was going on? It was
like very beginning of the year in my recollection, like day 1 or 2 of...
You didn't have a lot of runway then?
Not really, no.
So you had this idea, you were like, let's build dog houses, and this is the other 5th grade teachers?
Yeah.
The other 5th grade teachers were like, yeah, that sounds cool. And you're like, well, great, kids are going to be back in 4 days, so...
Fortunately, and I think they were just naive enough that they didn't realize how difficult it was going to be.
So I'm curious, did you prototype?
I did a cardboard and then a balsa wood prototype before pitching it to the students.
And what else did you do before the launch? What did you have locked down and figured out before the launch, and what were you like, we'll figure that out as we go?
I think what I loved before the launch that we had figured out, and they helped with this idea, is we had decided that we would do a pet adoption event for exhibition, and we would do it at Liberty Station, and we would get some of these pet adoption places to come over to Liberty Station, bring their dogs and cats, and then we would bring our cat condos and our dog houses out there. And anyone who came and adopted a cat or a dog that day could optionally bring home any one of the dog houses or the cat condos we built.
Got it. So you're kind of sweetening the deal.
Yeah, so that got me pretty excited that plan, I was like, that's perfect. That's a perfect plan.
Okay, I have to say, as a parent, I would be so mad about this exhibition.
I did start warning parents with emails. I did. I really did. Like,
Yeah.
just they're going to want a cat. They're going to want a dog. Get ready. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Be ready. They're going to want to. And if you did,
Yeah,
get one.
I'm sure they did. It wasn't just like we're building like a doghouse for an imaginary dog. There was
Right.
there was a clear audience for
Or
this.
even your family or,
Yeah.
clear audience. Yeah.
How far into the year did you wait before you launched?
I think we launched about a month in, and I remember myself being kind of antsy, but
Like you wanted to launch sooner?
yeah,
Or?
they wanted to do, all these intelligent things like curriculum and things like that, and I just wanted to launch.
Yeah. Going back to that before you launched, what was your biggest hope and biggest fear?
I think my biggest fear was, for some reason, I felt confident in doing the dog houses, but I had no idea about a cat condo and how that would work. So I remember just like faking it till I make it kind of attitude with that. But I was very excited. I had done other construction projects in the past, and I knew that the students were going to be really excited for this idea. And knowing what our soft and hard launch were going to be, I thought that they were going to be really excited too.
And why do you need a cat condo? Like, why not just be like, this is a project about dogs. We're going to adopt dogs. Done.
I think you always think about the kids, and there's going to be kids who are going to be just as excited about cats, I think, as dogs.
Right.
And so I liked that idea, that challenge.
Yeah. What were you hoping kids were going to learn from doing this?
The writing and the reading is, I think, always easy to game once you have a good idea and a good subject, because the kids were really excited. So we knew that they could do a lot of writing around the topic of a dog or a cat, and obviously a lot of reading too. That part always feels easy. I like construction projects because they kind of get at more math standards than perhaps other products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like what? Just for people who don't build things, how does that? Tell us a little bit more about where the math comes in.
Sure. For fifth grade, you have a lot of measurement sort of standards that come right in, even if it's like learning the metric system as well as our regular system. There's some conversions there. Another standard that's important is turning like two-dimensional things into three-dimensional nets. So we do a little of that when we're prototyping. There's a lot of volume that you can do, a lot of geometry that you can do that meets fifth grade standards, to name a few.
Were you converting between metric and like imperial in this project?
Not during, no.
Yeah,
So
that's
we focus strictly on the inch system, literally practicing, measuring in the classroom and so forth. But then later on in the year when you're not doing the project, then you can bring in the metric system and look at the, because they've hopefully mastered our system.
Yeah. And it is kind of like, yeah. And we'll talk more about the measurement thing, because I know from reading your article, there's some interesting stuff about that. All right, so you mentioned the hard launch and the soft launch. So what came first?
The soft launch, because we thought that would get them excited. So what we did is we lined up a few of these adoption centers that have cats and dogs. And if you've ever been on these things, they just basically have biographies of all the dogs and all the cats that are there for adoption. And I mean, if you could have been in our rooms when we showed these little biographies, they have names, they have, hobbies, it's just the kids were like falling over, rolling around. Oh, it was crazy, just nuts. Like we could have done it all day. I literally think we could have done it all day. It was a great soft launch. So they were in, that was it. It was off. Talk about a launch, it was off. They were fired up.
And were you building with specific animals in mind, or were you making more kind of like generic dog houses?
We thought about doing that, but we didn't. It was just too much.
Yeah.
So generic, but not generic in that they were uniquely designed, every one of them. So
Right.
no one was the same, which made it really easy.
So let's get into how the kids made their designs. We started talking a little bit about prototyping. So what was the process?
We start by just draw a doghouse. What do you think a doghouse is? And then you kind of do a little bit of critiquing where the kids will show their doghouse and other students might ask questions or, do a quick kind, specific, and helpful sort of comment, like, I love that you have a roof, but did you think about having a door? Things like that. So just to kind of get them, kind of in. And then you transition to giving them some cardboard. And along the way, we, of course, looked at dog houses, got online, look up some cool dog houses, look up some cool kitty condos. And then you start giving them some cardboard or some cardstock is what I usually use. And then let them, they're not really building to scale yet. They're just kind of trying to make the one that they think is cool.
Right.
And then you transition towards making plans and then moving toward, we went all the way to balsa wood, which I can talk about.
Yeah.
I love balsa wood if you're going to do construction because it's like mimics like 2x4s and it mimics 2x2s. Like if you really look at a set of balsa wood, it's like a miniature Home Depot. It's almost like a dollhouse Home Depot stuff. I really push them. Their final mini is balsa wood, and it will have the frame, and the frame will be built the same way that they will build the frame when they do the construction outside with the real wood. And for me, that's been a trick over the years that I've gotten so much bang for, that the students really, I feel like, are ready to build it because they made the balsa wood one.
Yeah.
The glue is the nail. That's the only thing. I mean, wherever they put glue is where they're putting nails. It's kind of the way we do it.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about how you're doing critique at this point, because I think like one of the things that teachers who are new to PBL kind of like, I think a mistake that often gets made is you kind of go like, hey, you have a thing, go critique each other's thing. Tell them what to change. I'll see you in 10 minutes. How did you scaffold it and structure it?
I often, because you always have a group that's ahead, that group though isn't always ahead because they're doing it good. So I often try to take the group that's ahead, stop everybody. So for example, when we were making our frames, just the base for the dog houses, that particular group, those groups, one group got way ahead. They didn't do it right. I can't remember why. There was something screwed up about it. But that doesn't matter. What's great about critique is it doesn't have to be exemplary. What you want is for it to be noticed if something's wrong. So the groups that are ahead, I usually get in front of the class. I kind of pause everybody. In my brain, it's going to be 10 minutes. It usually takes a little bit longer. And I just ask them to take a look at what this group has done. What do you see? What do you think? Remember to be kind. So again, they'll start out, they'll say something kind about what they're looking at, and then they'll say what they notice, like a specific noticing, like, hey, I noticed there's a crack in your main board, maybe you want to consider redoing that, reapplying that.
And I should have asked the groups. So initially kids are like, they're drawing and then they're building with cardboard and then they're building with balsa wood. At what point did they stop working individually and start working in groups?
Great question. Before they got to when we left the cardstock and moved, by then they have their groups, and when you get into the balsa wood, that's who your partner is. Because now you've made what is your final design.
Yeah. And so it was groups of two?
2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
And how did you make those groups?
In this case, I mostly let them choose. And that's definitely, I go back and forth from project to project but I knew the motivation would be there, so I figured even the hardest of challenges when it came to two students working together that might not be the most productive, I thought that they would come through just because of the desire to do it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so the kind of trade-offs that you're seeing is like, the upside is if kids can work with their friends, then that's kind of like exciting. The downside is your friends
it can flop.
Yeah.
So I think when you have high motivation, you have a better opportunity to have students work with who they want. And I think when there might be, if it's more challenging, like what they have to do, or just the motivation might not be as high, I think I'm going to be picking groups more.
Yeah. And did you have a concern that there were going to be kids who other people just didn't want to work with?
Yes. There's always that.
Yeah. How do you handle that?
That's why there's groups of 3.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. And do you just like go to like a couple kids? I'm guessing that you go to a couple kids who are going to be kind of okay with it. And you're like, look, it's a cool.
Yeah. And I always feel bad when you do it. It's like, I think they'll say yes, so I'm gonna. And obviously, I think the student I'm bringing to them will benefit from being in the group, but I'm not guessing that they're dying to have that student in their group. But
yeah. And then you had a situation where there were a couple kids who they had different designs, and tell us about that pair. Yeah,
it was weird. I had a couple students leave in the middle of the project, like their parents moved or whatever the reasons were. So I ended up with one student losing their partner, they were making a cat condo, and one student losing the partner, and they were making a doghouse. And we were already getting nervous about how many products we had, so we made the decision, like, we need to make them work together, which immediately the problem was one of them's a cat person, one of them's a dog person, and we had to ask these two boys to, like, come together and make a plan, like, which way do you want to go?
What happened?
This is the best. I was really worried about it. Like, I'm like, this is really unfair to even ask them. But we were feeling cheap, and we were getting worried about the product. Like, we just had too many products, and we knew it. We had too many doghouses and too many cat condos. Anyway, they came up with this idea that I never saw coming. They were just going to do a combo. So they were just going to stick the cat condo on top of the doghouse. And they called it a combo. It's going to be a combo. So I just thought it was great. And they did do it. They just didn't end up doing the full cat condo plans. They just kind of did a simple sort of couple cat ideas on top of the doghouse. But it was great. Great idea by them.
That's awesome. And they had to, as I recall, they had a scale issue too, right?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. So the boy who did the cat condo did it either on a 1/2-inch or a 1-inch scale. I can't remember which was which. One of them did it on a 1/2-inch scale, and one of them did it on a 1-inch scale. And because they were deciding to build both of them, just one was going to go on top of the other, they were nervous about, like, well, will it work if we have two different scales? Because I just watched. I mean, I watched them talk about it. I didn't intervene, and I actually walked away. And in my brain, I'm like, God, I hope they decide to just have one scale or the other. But of course, it doesn't really matter, and that is the conclusion they came to. Like, as long as the cat boy stuck to his scale when they built it, and the dog person stuck to their scale when they built it, it should come out right, which is pretty good for a 10-year-old to kind of figure out. Like, we don't actually have to combine them. I don't know. It still made me nervous. I don't know why, but they did it.
Yeah. And another thing that you do that I thought was interesting is that you said, like, kids will work stuff out wrong, and they'll ask you to cut it for them.
Yep.
And you'll just do what they told you to do.
Yes, because you only have to do it a little bit at the beginning. So they'll measure terribly. I mean, really bad sometimes. Like, just so bad. Sometimes I just don't even understand what could have happened. But not to measure, the lines are not straight, and there's so many things. But I will cut it wrong and give it back to them, because they so quickly see how far, visually they just see it, how far off it is. And once you bring that in front of the class and let it get critiqued, it just sends up the red flag to all the other groups, to pay attention a lot more when they measure.
How do you kind of, like, protect kids' emotional well-being when they're bringing their screwed up stuff in front of the class? And, like, some fifth grader might have theirs to be like, are you an idiot? What's the, like, look at that. How's that, like?
It doesn't sound like that. That's all. And I don't know if I always successfully do what you just said. But, the kind-specific helpful approach helps. They are taught and trained and know, and I always remind them, like, the first thing you're saying is what's good about it every time. And I say it pretty much every time. Mm-hmm. Like, what's good about it? Because they do this. Sometimes they want to jump right in. It's like, what's good about it? And sometimes what they say that's good about it is very, very, like, okay, let me just get that. Let me say the good thing and get out of the way, because they want to get at the critique. But It helps. It stops from what you were about to say. It's frustrating to do a lot of work and feel like none of the good parts were noticed, and all we're noticing is the flaw.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, like, assessment along the way.
Okay.
I always think about assessment as, like, making sure that kids are learning the stuff that you intend for them to learn and knowing what they need, or, like, what they need to do next. How are you doing that?
Well, I feel like I'm assessing the way I normally assess when I'm in a project. Just meaning, like, there's a writing piece, I'm grading a writing piece, I'm assessing a writing piece. There's reading, I'm grading, assessing, doing mini lessons, doing groups around it. It's just that it's attached to the project, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to, like, the math, some of those standards, I do feel like I'm assessing, watching them measure things and watching them build things, and their understanding of something like volume or the geometric parts that go along with building the doghouse. And sometimes, not all the times, I do literally draw up a quiz or a test that, like, fits. Like, okay, let me see if they understand this. even if it's like with rulers, like rulers are incredibly complicated, right? Like something to the 16th inch, that's a great quiz for me to sort of just throw at them after we practice it a little bit. Can they read what 3/8 is? Can they read what 9/16 is? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's an easy quiz, an easy assessment.
Yeah. And I think something that the ninth grade teacher, Ted Cuevas, said to me that really stuck with me is that, like, by far the most important assessment is self-assessment, because I'll only be their teacher for a year, but they're going to be with themselves forever. And if they can assess how they're doing and whether they're making sense out of something and what they're learning and what they need to do, that's the most important skill. And I think it's an incredible assessment experience to have a totally poor, like an incorrectly measured piece of wood cut for you. Like, that's a real quick, authentic assessment. You're working with the adoption agency. Were they involved throughout, or was it like after that initial trip, you were kind of on your own doing your thing?
We worked with a few, and I know, like, it felt like one we were using kind of off and on throughout because they were the ones we did the calendars with. But really, it was more of they helped us out at the beginning, especially by letting us come and do the visit. And that was the Humane Society, which, interestingly, we're going to do the project again this year, and the Humane Society doesn't do visits anymore, so we'll have to figure something out. But anyway, it was kind of a beginning and end thing, right? Because then they brought the animals at the end for the adoption, and they helped us out in the beginning. But along the way, we brought in a trained police dog into the gym. That was really fun. They just kind of showed off how this dog can just, all the things it can do, and sniffing bombs and that kind of stuff.
Did you have anybody who was helping out with the construction side of things, or was that just on you?
So this is a great idea if you ever do a construction project. This one I've learned over the years. What we did was, when you know you're getting into the heavy construction part where they're really going to be building and there's going to be saws everywhere and there's going to be hammers and nails, we do a morning and an afternoon sign up for parents. Is a block. It's a 2-hour block. And we basically had 2 full weeks of construction. We needed more like 4, but I think we ended up doing 3 weeks. Anyway, if you do a morning block for a couple hours, hour and a half or 2 hours, and you do an afternoon block for an hour and a half or 2 hours, it's amazing how many parents will give up their time, because they love it too, right? They come down, they help their kid building their doghouse or their cat condo, and you give them that flexibility that you can either come in the morning or in the afternoon. That's huge. I suggest anyone do it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it comes time for exhibition. Liberty Station is going to be filled with dogs looking for a home and cats looking for a home. Tell us about that. That sounds crazy to me.
Well, there's always parts that you kind of forget about. And the thing, I won't say we totally forgot, but it got close before we realized, like, well, all the doghouse and cat condos are in the back. They were back here in the back parking lot. And we can't, like, put them on a red wagon and carry them, 400 yards to the park across the street. So a couple days out, we had to start asking parents, who's got trucks. And, of course, we got lucky. One parent had this massive, I don't even know what you'd call it, bigger than a truck. So it worked out. We had a couple dads that helped out and moms, and we were able to get all the product, the quarter of a mile down the road. But yeah, that was a funny moment where I'm like, oh yeah, we can't just sort of carry those over.
Yeah.
By the way, a couple of the doghouses are maybe way too big. We won't do that this year.
So did you just like have to leave them there for a couple days, like, and hope nobody like messed with them? What was the like
over there?
Yeah, or over in the.
You mean for what got left for the exhibition?
When you were setting up for the exhibition.
Well, we did it all at once.
You did all at once, right?
Oh, yeah. We help. The parents were gung ho. I mean, I think they see the excitement of their kid. I don't know how it works. I don't know if the kid in them gets excited, but the parents were all in. So that's helped
awesome.
A bunch. Yeah.
And so, did you need to get special permits to have a bunch of dogs be like?
We did.
In NTC?
Yeah.
So you just made sure you.
Yeah. That's what colleagues are for.
Yeah.
Did a really good job of that, getting those permits.
And so was it daytime, nighttime? What was set the scene? For
morning. Yeah, I think we started around 11.
Did you do it on a weekday or weekend?
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning.
Yeah, Liberty Station. That was great. It was so many people. It was really fun.
So you just had random people coming in for Liberty Station, like, oh, hey,
yeah. In addition to the parents, you've got so many people roaming around there. We figured that would be hit, and it was. There's one more part of the project's worth mentioning. We did team up with a guy named Shorty Rossi, who used to have a pit bull sort of show on TV, and he lives down in Mexico, and he came up for it. He kind of became our keynote speaker. And the wild thing about it all, as I said, we really did make some doghouses that were too big. Like, they're just huge doghouses, and he has a pit bull farm down there, and he said that whatever's left over, and it seemed like the bigger ones were going to be left over because, in San Diego, I think they were bigger than some people's yards. So no one was going to take it, right? So he took them. He said he'll drive his flatbeds up here, in a few days, and he took them all. So that felt really good. So they all went somewhere. So his pit bulls down in Mexico, while they're waiting to get adopted, are in our doghouses. So that's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
This is the thing I always ask the students afterwards. What was your golden moment of exhibition? What's when you think back on it?
It was when there were a few. They all kind of tie together. I think the first to go was a cat, and it was like a cat condo. And the cat condos came out beautiful. I mean, there's so much talk about the doghouses, but I couldn't believe how great some of the cat condos came out. So for me, I was really excited to see this, the two girls who made this cat condo. And of course, what's beautiful is we're taking photos of them with the family that adopted this cat and then chose their cat condo. So now you're taking a photo of them. So that feels really good. The news came, so they were interviewing some of the kids. That was exciting. And seeing children climb all over the doghouses was kind of cool. Like all the people that brought their children, and there were just children climbing in and out and all over the doghouses. I kind of like that too.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you all. If you have a question, come on up to the microphone. I'm going to make sure that we get it all set up here.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get a lot of project-based learning and just community projects at the school I work at, but it is very much unlike High Tech High, where it seems like the whole school is gung-ho about community involvement. So it's really just every time I get a community partner, it's because I'm walking to these businesses and I'm talking to the people that own them, or I'm just grassroots contacting them. Mm-hmm. How do you recommend is a very successful way for getting community partners and interactions with all that?
I feel like I haven't done too much of what you did, but I love that. That's what you're literally it sounds like you're knocking on a door. Yeah. That's great. We have found a lot of success, speaking for other colleagues and myself. The answers seem to be through the parents. When you put it out to the parents, we're interested in somebody who knows something about this or might be an expert in that, it's amazing how often you get a response my brother's whoever is this, and that's where I've gotten the most success over the years. It almost always feels like I find it through parents by putting an all email out, and my colleagues are doing it too, right? So you got three fifth grade teachers putting it out to whatever, you've got 150 parents. There's a lot of connections that way. Had a lot of luck. That's my first go-to.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sure.
I think also you're doing, really going, there's a thing about just, it's so much more work, but being face-to-face with somebody, your results are so much better. Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, we did a boat, we did a project where they had to build a cardboard boat and float themselves and their buddy, and we put out about boat experts, and sure enough, one of the students' fathers drives a tugboat right here in the harbor. So we did this whole launch where they spent some time on that beach over in Coronado, and he drove his tugboat up to see us. It was a big surprise. Just that kind of moment, the kids were losing their minds. So there you go, that's my story, sorry.
Yeah.
Got a little excited for tugboats.
Talk to your site manager too.
Tugboats are cool.
Yeah, tugboats are super cool. But your site manager they'll know a lot of the parents kind of going across the whole thing, and they might be oh yeah, so and so's parent, they do it, whatever, and they're gonna have that. Your colleagues will know as well, but you only know, nobody has that full picture.
Okay, how long of a process was this? And are we talking you had said it was about 3 weeks of the heavy building, but are we talking all day, every day for 3 weeks? And what about during the drafting phase?
Yeah, good question. I always think of it, especially the construction projects, but all projects, it builds. So at first you're not allocating as much time towards the project, you're kind of dipping in, and as the wheels start to spin and you get into, ours went from late September to mid-January. We did our exhibition, I think, around mid-January. So whatever that was, 3.5 months. But by the time you get to that last month, It feels like every subject is all project. Like whatever we're doing in math, it's connected to project. Whatever we're doing in writing is fully connected to project. And whatever we're doing, that's why it's so important to have the curriculum connected to the project, because you can't do both. You can't teach a writing product. You just don't have time. Like the writing product has to be connected to the project, in my opinion, and so does the reading, and as much math as you can wring out of it.
Yeah, and you want to try to avoid the project kind of like competing with other stuff, because like if the project's working and kids are stoked about it, and you're like, well, yeah, but today's like whatever, today's our like guys, time to do our like our article of the week, and the kids are like, I've got to like
get out your Greek roots notebook, we
exactly.
have to do it,
And so I think that is like
that
that's
possible.
You want to avoid, especially when you're in that like crunch time.
Yeah.
Thank you. And curious minds want to know how many pets got adopted.
I don't want to make up the count. Probably my two colleagues know better, but I want to say it was around 15. We had higher hopes, but we didn't end up with very many dogs. We ended up with way more cats. One of them bailed last second. We were crushed, so we didn't have a lot of dogs. We had more cats. There's a lot of dog houses, but not a lot of dogs. No.
I'm just wondering how we can see photos, or if we can see photos.
I have tons of photos, but Alec only wanted one.
All right. Yeah, I needed one photo for the slide.
They're pretty awesome.
We'll share. We'll make photos. We'll make photos available. I'll say we'll make photos available in the show notes for the episode, but more quickly we'll make photos available for you all.
I'd love to show photos because I think it really shows their creativity and the uniqueness of each doghouse and each cat condo. It was even better than I had anticipated.
Yeah. If you can stick around a little bit, you can totally show photos.
I could check some up.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'm also wondering just in what location you built the projects.
Right in this back, right here in the back parking lot. Yeah, we basically sectioned off the last section, probably with no permit at all, and just said it's ours and put some cones up. And that was where we built.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's a good thing about elementary school. You didn't have a bunch of like angry 12th graders like trying to park.
Agreed, and it's a good thing about high tech is it's just sort of becomes normal that these spaces get taken over as you get closer to exhibition, and nobody seems to give you a hard time. So
Yeah,
it's nice.
absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I love this project. We'll talk again about Ninja Warrior. I'm just gonna drop that as a for the
I'd
future.
love to. That deserves more credit than it got, I think.
Yeah, we'll as a big fan of the show, I'm eager to talk about that.
Right on.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you all to our audience here.
Thank you.
All right, big round of applause for Jeff.
Thank you.
High Tech High Unboxed is hosted and edited by me, Alec Patton. Our theme music is by Brother Herschel. Huge thanks to Jeff Govoni and the students of Deeper Learning via PBL for this episode. Jeff wrote an awesome article about doing construction projects with kids for the latest issue of Unboxed. You can find a link to it in the show notes. Thanks for listening.